of a bitch.
When you look back on the 80s, some of the most obvious and memorable aspects of the era have to be fashion, Reaganomics, glam rockers, dodgy soap operas, and most importantly, as far as this episode goes, muscular, action-packed, high-concept movies. We've covered many of these wonderful films already on 80s Horror Memories, but consider the lasting legacy of movies such as The Terminator,
I'll be back,
Rambo, Alien, and Die Hard, which of course aren't all necessarily horror movies per se, and you can see why the era is much revered.
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
Weekends and some weekdays when I wasn't at school playing sports or attempting to be a rock star with my pals were spent catching up on the latest movies in the cinema or on our rickety old VHS player. Seriously, that thing was about as reliable as my old Spectrum 48K. The rubber-keyed little shit that decided to crash each time the main graphics were loading on Jetpack or whatever game I was obsessed with at the time. Gaming was a frustrating experience back then. However, it was one of those aforementioned high-concept films that joined the likes of RoboCop in being a massive influence on my love for movies, and I eventually managed to see a copy of it through unconventional means. And I don't mean by enlisting my brother, the pirate's help.
Savvy.
You may remember in our 1980 episode focusing on the Stanley Kubrick The Shining, I talked about a local video store run by Freddy. That wasn't his real name, of course, but we'll stick with it regardless. On a Friday or Saturday night, my friends and I would grab our Deathbox or Santa Cruz decks and skate up to Lion Videos, which was located in a small shopping mall just up the road from our home. We never found out Freddy's real name or why it was even called Lion Videos, but despite being underage, we'd be guaranteed to be rented R-rated movies. Thanks, Freddy. One such title was the awesome Predator, featuring Arnie and a bunch of macho soldiers being hunted by an extraterrestrial threat in a Central American rainforest. It's one of the most iconic movie monsters ever created. But is the movie more than just a sci-fi actioner? Or is it simply machismo brawn over brains? Well, let's head into the jungle and find out here on our 80s Horror Memories.
Yeah. Stick around.
I'm sure many of you wonderful gorehounds will have seen the Jack Black comedy Be Kind Rewind from 2008, and if so, I'm sure its premise will resonate with you. One of the main gripes of renting movies back in the 80s was the frustrating way in which people would forget, or not bother, to rewind the VHS copies of movies that they'd rented, whether they were from Freddy or more conventional businesses like Blockbuster. You'd excitedly open the box to see that the tape was mostly on the spool on the right side of the tape. Even worse, your daft older brother, like mine, may have put the tape in and pressed play without first checking it, only to spoil a major part of the movie like a jackass. Thanks, bro. However, this time around, Predator remained unspoiled, but also unrewound, which meant waiting a while for that shitty, rickety VHS player to rewind the tape, making a desperate whirring sound as it did so. My brother is a few years older than I am, and he would also invite his older pals to watch movies with us, which, to be fair, was pretty awesome, especially if some of those friends were girls.
Predator is, I had a great fortune to work with a film editor named John F. Link. John was the editor of that film, co-editor of Predator. He went on to cut Die Hard afterwards, was nominated for cutting Die Hard. When I worked with John was on an HBO series called The Hitchhiker, which was, basically anthology Yuppies Run Amok. But the interesting thing about the time I worked with John is it was during his break when they were on hiatus and redoing The Creature from Predator. So they had shot all the stuff with the creature that didn't work, with the Van Damme creature, the praying mantis, and then they shut down while Stan Winston was redoing the creature, and that's when I worked with John during that period. So I heard all about the version of Predator that didn't work. I would sit in his cutting room and he would tell me all these stories about it, and heard a lot about, Arnold hated it and this and that, and nobody liked it, and it just wasn't going to come together. And they had this new version that they were going to go back and shoot for 6 weeks when he finished. So we finished working on The Hitchhiker in January. That was like my first job in the film industry. I was like as an apprentice film editor, and he went to cut that, and I saw John that summer, and after Predator was finished, and it just literally saw it in the theater, then went and had lunch with him in down in California, and he talked about just what a difference it was to get this creature that works so effectively now, and the fact that it was this great sort of mask, and how those battles all went, but all that was reshot. All that was something they did later. They had the whole film, and then they had to go back and retroactively put that in to make that movie work. And I think that's one of the things, it's a great story of this sort of rescue mission that goes awry, and this monster from another world and coming down to hunt. It's the most dangerous game with an alien. The plot is ludicrously simple, which is why it works so well. You could have written it on the back of a napkin. But that's that's why it's so effective. It's just simple, and it's just David and Goliath. Only David in this case is played by Arnold. But it's it's a landmark creature that still people are making Predator movies to this day.
Back in the 80s, it was our mission as adolescents to obtain and binge watch as much senseless, over-the-top sex and violence as possible. And to a large degree, we succeeded. There were also rumors of raunchy porno mags being stashed away under the local leisure center's entrance ramp, which were true.
I finally get to see what a vagina looks. Oh God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
And my friends would brag about iconic scenes from movies that they had watched recently via a dodgy VHS copy. The eye gouging from The Terminator, or when Bruce Campbell chopped his own hand off in Evil Dead 2, would gain mythical status between my pals and I. Some of us hadn't even seen those movies, but we would wax lyrical about the scenes as if they were still fresh in our memories. After seeing Predator for the first time, another set of scenes and quotes soon began to take on a mythical status. We hadn't been spoiled by modern marketing campaigns that seem to give away most of the best money shots from movies nowadays. So when Apollo Creed had his arm blown off and Arnie taunted the Predator with his
"You one ugly motherfucker"
line, we were delirious with excitement. Unsurprisingly, like many other movies from the decade, it fell foul of the dreaded censors around the globe when either shown on TV or on its physical home entertainment formats. On American TV broadcasts, all shots of the Predator's naked face were inexplicably removed, as were all instances of the Predator mimicking human speech. Also, quite hilariously, a lot of the best moments of the movie were cut for TV broadcast. Amusingly, in the Italian language version, one solitary word slipped through the dubbing process. Around the 1 hour and 16-minute mark, Dutch is being chased by the Predator and says shit as he slips and begins sliding towards a cliff.
Shit!
As I've mentioned many times over the course of this wonderfully nostalgic series, the route to obtaining movies such as Predator came from either Freddy, the amenable local video store guy, or my older sibling. In the case of Predator, my first viewing of the movie was at a friend's house while their parents were on a night out. We would often get together on weekends to either race our RC cars around the local park, hang out in the mall chasing girls, or in this case, bond over age-inappropriate movies. My brother's pal Jason had acquired a copy of the film, and up until that point, the only information we had about it was that it starred the king of violent movies, Arnie, and it was R-rated. Oh, and apparently there was a scene in which somebody's ripped open chest cavity was on full display, which there was, and it was awesome. This clandestine viewing of Predator was one of the most defining moments as a young lad where you feel like you're doing something that you shouldn't be, but the rewards far outweighed the potential fallout. In fact, during our second viewing of the movie, Jason's folks returned from wherever they had been that night, probably drunk, and didn't give a shit that we'd taken over the front room and were waxing lyrical about the Predator being
One ugly motherfucker.
My friends and I would talk about that night for years, about the over-the-top muscles and machismo on display, the amazing retro visual effects, and especially as the movie really kicks into gear in the third act, as Arnie's squad starts to get picked off one by one. It's one of those movies that, if it comes on TV, I can't help but get invested in it all over again. And yes, even if it's the version that's cut to shreds. What's so great about Predator, aside from the obvious, awesome alien action, blood, guts, blown off arms, Arnie's one-liners,
What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils? Huh?
is that it's also a very efficiently directed action thriller. Director John McTiernan displayed a wonderful knack for visuals and mayhem in the movie, and would further enhance his reputation in action cinema with the irrepressible Die Hard the following year. It's a superb clash of genres with a pretty simple premise that throws a grenade-sized bunch of ideas at the screen. It's a horror monster movie, an 80s action behemoth, it has sci-fi leanings, and it also makes the most of its muscle-bound cast, with one-liners and dumbass machismo thrown in for good measure. It was a shame my friends and I didn't get a chance to witness the mayhem on the big screen when we were kids, but that first load of R-rated movies we saw helped to shape my love for film, and was also the first major expansion of my cinema universe. Also helped in a huge way by a certain space opera that Disney inexplicably seemed to have ruined since acquiring Lucasfilm.
Ray Skywalker.
I'm a firm believer that cinema is a way of life, and you can never replicate the thrill of experiencing an amazing movie for the first time with like-minded fans on the big screen. Although we never got to sneak into a screening of Predator, our adolescence was still full of memorable movies caught on the big screen. I'll bite through the back door sometimes.
Predator became one of my father Stan's most well-known creatures, but it almost never happened. Boss Films created the first Predator suit. It was a very unique bug-like design, but it was on stilts and was very impractical for the jungle setting, and they had to shut down the movie. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had worked with Stan on the Terminator, suggested that John McTiernan get in touch with Stan and hopefully save the movie and create a new Predator. Well, Stan and his team had only about 6 weeks to do it, but they devised what would become one of the great creature suits, monster suits in Hollywood history, Predator. That film works really, really well. They put together the most macho men in the movies at the time, Arnold and Carl Weathers and Jesse the Body Ventura and other just muscle men of the day, and they all are trying to outdo each other in the macho department. And then along comes 7'4" Kevin Peter Hall in a Stan Winston Predator suit, and he outmuscles them all. And that's really what makes the movie great.
With the success of Predator, not only in cinemas, where it eventually grossed $98.3 million worldwide off a reported budget of $15 to $18 million, but also via home entertainment. The talk of a follow-up was inevitable. So, after Arnie went toe-to-toe with the 7-foot monster, did a massively lucrative and critically lauded franchise emerge? Well, not exactly. But that's not to say that the subsequent movies and crossovers were altogether a disappointment. In 1990, 20th Century Fox released Predator 2, directed by Stephen Hopkins and starring Danny Glover, Gary Busey, Bill Paxton, and Kevin Peter Hall once again as the titular Predator. Arnie's absence was a huge loss. But the movie is a lot of fun, with the Los Angeles set action a neat idea and its modern cult following much deserved.
You are one ugly mother.
Fox also released 2 more sequels with the Nimrod Antel directed Predators in 2010 and Shane Black's The Predator in 2018, both of which have their moments but fail to enhance the franchise any more than being simply average action movies. It wasn't until 2022's Prey, a prequel directed by Dan Trachtenberg, that the franchise was stripped back to the basics for a lean, mean, and effective stalk and prey thriller. It had some great kills and a superb lead role for the awesomely named Amber Midthunder.
You could get shot sneaking up like that.
Who's sneaking?
Aside from the several sequels and that one prequel, we also got the divisive Aliens vs. Predator films, plus some fun video games that allowed you to play as either a predator, an alien, or even a colonial marine. I spent many an hour playing the superb Aliens vs. Predator 2, mainly as the Predator, so I could splat alien acid blood all over the place. Man, I love that game. I know we've mentioned the visual effects briefly in this retrospective, but there's something wonderfully nostalgic about not only the 80s aesthetic of the VFX, but also how the real-life locations add a sense of immersion to the movie. CGI was very much in its infancy when Predator was released, which thankfully meant that a lot of the VFX were done practically. The Predator's costume looks amazing, and the gory gags littered throughout all have that great practical look to them. However, for the scenes in which the Predator is camouflaged, it must have been one hell of a painstaking job for the VFX artists to chroma key him out of the scenes. Also, while the film wasn't entirely shot on location, the production did shoot in the jungles of Mexico, which lent a very real dimension to the proceedings. Predator remains one of Arnie's most beloved action thrillers of the 80s, and being a huge fanboy of the Austrian oak, it's always a pleasure to look back on the movie with fresh and more mature eyes as the years go by. I caught the film at a time when I was beginning to form a group of friends who would become lifelong companions in my movie-going adventures, even still to this day. So ultimately, I hope this video has given you something to ponder the next time you take a trip to the Central American rainforest to battle an almost invisible alien hunter, hell-bent on removing your spine or hanging your lifeless body from a tree. The Predator is one of cinema's most iconic movie monsters, and rightfully so. It's a shame its legacy hasn't seen the best possible sequels overall, but there's still time for Prey to breathe some more life into what is a world with vast potential. As always, your opinion means the most to us here at JoBlo, so let us know your thoughts on Predator in the comments.
Run! Go! Get to the chopper!
On the next episode, we head back to the cabin in the woods with Ash Williams, and this time, he brought a few jokes with him. Until next time, Gorehounds.
Groovy.
Hi friends, your humble narrator Tyler Nichols here, and I hope that you enjoyed that episode of 80s Horror Memories. If you missed our previous episode, click over here. If you want to see more from our series, click up here. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Subscribe right here. And most importantly, stay spooky, folks.